Hi, welcome to this course for cracking software job interviews for college graduates and freshers. If you are a college graduate and about to appear for your first job interview, then this is the exactly kind of course you should be going for so that you are well prepared for your first interview. If at all you have already appeared for multiple interviews and still yet to get your first job offer, then I'm pretty sure that this course is going to help you prepare a lot better for your next interview so that you can crack it. This job interview course is designed from software engineering perspective. So if you're appearing for a software developer role or a software tester role or a quality assurance role, or even if it's an HR interview, all these technical and HR aspects are covered in this particular course. Now, let me take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Ganesh. This is my LinkedIn profile, and I have spent 18 years in the software industry. I have worked with IBM, Infosys, Symantec, and even startups like PubMatic. Now, during these 18 years, I also have been on the technical recruitment panel of these organizations. So I have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of candidates. And at the same time, I have seen many candidates clearing multiple rounds of interview and some of them failing very badly at their interviews. So I thought I should share my experience with each one of these fresh graduates and freshers so that they are positioned well to crack the interviews. And that is where this course is exactly designed for. Now, what you will learn from this particular course. Now, this course I have divided into multiple lectures. The first one is what to include and what not to include on your resume. I would stress more on what not to include on your resume and how you can avoid yourself a kind of a tricky situation or trouble in the interview for yourself. The second lecture in the course will be for preparing your interviews based on the organization type. The type of organization you are appearing for an interview directly defines the complexity or the difficulty of your interview rounds. So it is important to understand what kind of organization you are appearing for. Next, we'll understand the organization hiring process, what is the job description, how is the overall interview round scheduled, till the point you get a job offer. Then I think this is a very important chapter, understanding the interviewer's mindset. Now, the person who is sitting in front of you taking your interview obviously wants to hire you. He has a job. There is an open position in the organization, and he's actually looking for some spark in you so that they can actually go ahead and hire you, right? So it is important to understand his mindset, what exactly he's looking for, so that you can redirect or rephrase your answers so that they make a more positive impact on him. So that this particular mindset is actually covered in almost all of my slides, or all of my lectures. Then we are going to talk about technical preparation. As I said, this course is for software interviews. So we are going to touch base some of the concepts you should be preparing for when you appear for technical interviews. And then we have a mock technical coding interview lecture where we're going to walk through a particular programming example and how I'm going to ask you to solve it. And then we are going to go into a discussion about how the interview is going to judge you and what you should have done and what you should have not done there. Same thing for the folks who are preparing for the software testing or quality assurance roles. We have a mock lecture there around a test case scenario or test case writing scenario, and what kind of mistakes you can avoid there or how you can actually impress the interviewers there. Then there is a lecture around HR interview. So we are going to cover top 4 HR interview questions and the sample answers to those. And at the end of this particular lecture, I also have a handbook to hand over to you, which has 20 HR questions and the answers to those questions. Then we'll discuss about handling tricky situations in the interviews. So by tricky, I mean sometimes you really don't know the answer to certain set of questions repetitively. So how do you handle those? So that's one thing that will be covered in this particular session. Then at the end of the interview, what kind of questions you can really ask so that you again leave a positive impact to in the mind of the interviewer. So we're going to have a lecture around that. And then the last session is around luck factor and preparation. So this is more of a psychological and moral related lecture. And we're going to discuss how your luck factor weighs against your preparation and what else you can do to increase your odds of clearing your rounds. So that's what this whole course is about. Now, I know that getting that first call of interview itself is very challenging. And in case if you have that opportunity, a job interview sitting lying in front of you, it is very important that you convert that opportunity into a job offer, because there is no assurity when the next job interview is coming to you or when the next call is coming to you. And we all know that getting that first job in your career is a significant milestone. And I am pretty sure that this course is going to help you crack that interview and get that first job you are looking for. So see you in my lectures, and thank you for watching this presentation. Thank you. Hi, welcome to this lecture where we are going to discuss about the importance of creating a good resume, and in the subsequent lectures we'll also try to create one. But before moving ahead, it is very important for you to understand that your resume is your representative. Not everybody gets a chance to stand directly in front of the HR and the technical recruiter to explain them how highly skilled resource you are. That is simply not possible. The only way to explain your skills, your grades, your achievements to the HR or the technical recruiter is via your resume. So if you create a really good resume and send it across, it helps them to take a better call whether they should call you for an interview or not, because your resume is representing you. So think of your resume also as your invisible friend. It is doing the talking on your behalf. Now it is just not just restricted only about whether they should call you for the interview or not. Also, during the interview, the technical interviewer will sit in front of you and he'll have your resume in your hand. The same copy that you have sent on email, they'll print it and they'll have that copy on the table. So, the things that you put on your resume will be discussed during the interview. Okay, so then if there are some mistakes on your resume or the skills that you mention on your resume, they'll also be discussed during the interview face to face. So, you want to avoid any awkward instances, just for the matter of fact that you have made some mistakes on your resume while sending. So you need to review your resume very thoroughly, and that's what we are going to discuss in the next lecture. So that's it for this particular lecture. See you in the next lecture. Thank you. Hi, welcome back. Now that we have understood that what can go in a resume and what cannot go in a resume, let's go ahead and take a look at a sample resume. And for your information, in the resources section, I have also attached a sample resume which you can download and update for yourself. There's also a link to a website which I'm not affiliated with, but it has a link to a lot of template resumes which you can download and then update for yourself. But do not restrict yourself with these templates, and you can add your own creativity to your resume. So let us take a look at one of the resumes. So I have this one resume in Word format, and one thing I wanted to highlight here is that stick to a Word document or to a PDF document. Do not create resume in a format which cannot be opened by the HR or the technical recruiter on their computer if it needs some other software. So stick to a Word document or to a PDF, which are globally recognized. So let's take a look at this particular resume now. So the name goes at the top, there followed by his contact information, phone number, email, and the LinkedIn profile. Let us take a look at the right side of the section of the resume. He has his address and an alternate contact number. I would urge all of you to put an alternate contact number just in case your primary number is not reachable. Then the skills categorized by the technologies, operating system, tools, programming languages, and references. If you have references, it's fine. If you have references in the organization that you are applying for, please do put it here. Then the social profiles. Here I would like to highlight the Stack Overflow profile. If you are active contributor on Stack Overflow, you have asked questions, you have answered questions, you have a good reputation there, please put the Stack Overflow link here, or you can as well put it at the top of the resume. It is definitely going to make an impact during the interview face to face. Then you can put in your academic details there, your graduation details, school details, your grades. All this can go under the academic details section. Now the right side of the resume, here's the summary. Now summary is basically, it is optional, I would say, but if you have some ambition or goal, feel free to write it here, but do not write a big paragraph. Try to keep it smaller and crispy. Then any certificates that you might have got, that you can put in here, then followed by your achievements. Any awards in your school, graduation course that can go in there. There are a few examples here of what you can put in there. Feel free to update it as per your own experience. Any paper presentations that you might have done. Again, one thing to note here is if you're putting all these paper presentations and certifications here, expect questions on this for sure. 100% there will be questions on what was the paper about, and can you give me a brief? Can you draw an architecture diagram about it? You will have these questions here. So put those things on the resume that you can take up questions for. That is what we discussed in the last lecture as well. Then the professional details. So if you have done internship, I think that you should put in first year followed by your academic project. So this is how a sample resume can look like. And if you want to save it as Word or as PDF, sorry, my bad, you can just select the file format as PDF, and it can be exported as a PDF format also. Sometimes PDF resume do look good based on the kind of format that it is created. The left side section can have a gray color and the right section can have white color. They really turn out to be good on the screen. So you can play around that also. So this is about a sample resume, and as I said, it's also uploaded in the resources section for you to download. And this is how you can create a resume. I think we have covered the whole lectures around resume, and in the next lectures, we'll move on to the next topic of this particular course. Thank you, and see you in the next lecture. Hi, welcome back. In the last lecture, we saw the importance of your resume and how it is a representative of yourself. In this lecture, we'll see how a resume document looks like, what are the do's and don'ts around it when you create one. So let's proceed. I would like to really start with what you should not really include on your resume. And the first thing is any skill or any skill sets for which you cannot handle questions in the interview should not be on your resume. Let me give an example. Let's say you put Unix operating system as one of the operating systems on your resume. Now, it could be that you have started Unix recently and you are still about to even achieve a basic level of knowledge of Unix operating system. Now, if that goes on your resume and the interviewer has no idea about it, so if he sees that on your resume, you're sitting face to face or you're on a Zoom interview call, he starts asking questions like, basic questions. How do you check the operating system or the machine IP address? How do I copy file from one operating system of Unix machine to the another machine? Or do you know the grep command? Or do you know the VI editor? So if you cannot answer these basic questions, then it's better that you do not put Unix on your resume. That is just an example. Now now I have seen people putting like 8 to 10 different programming languages on their resume, like C, C++, Java, .NET, Python, Perl, shell scripting. It's fine, but then you should be able to at least answer some questions. Or maybe you can let the interviewer know that, hey, Python or Java is my primary skills, and then the other programming languages I have learned during my academic assignments, which then the interviewer can understand, and then he'll stick to your primary languages. So that's how you should put it. So the summary is, do not put any skill set which you really cannot take up questions, which is going to create a weird or awkward situation in the interview, and then you have to say no for certain set of questions there, which you really don't want to do that. The next thing, spelling mistakes and grammatical errors on your resume. Now, this is not really a big factor to reject a candidate, but not every HR person or not every technical recruiter is open like me. Sometimes I tend to ignore these mistakes, but not everybody is in a position to ignore these mistakes. After all, if you think it is just a 2-page document or a 3-page document, what is the possibility of having a spelling mistake or grammatical error on that document? Ideally, it should be zero. So I hope you got the message here. Uneven page format, font, and font size of your resume. Personally, I have seen resumes where the page format, the first page is in a different format, the second page has a different font or a different font size. I feel sometimes like I'm looking at two different resumes. I would really put this resume aside if you cannot create one uniform document. That is definitely not going to create a very good impression for you. So try to avoid these kind of mistakes. Review your resume from your friends, from your colleagues, so that they can give you feedback around that. And the last thing I wanted to highlight, what should not be on your resume, is your fake work experience or references. Now, these instances are very less, but there are instances where people have faked their work experiences, fake references. This is not going to work. The thing is, when you are offered a job, the organization obviously collects a set of documents from you, your graduation certificate copies, your internship details, and all of this is handed over to a third party verification agency, which does a background check on all of the information that you have provided. So, any discrepancy in the background information check versus the documents or information that you have provided is going to be a problem for you. So, this is exactly all the things that you should not put on your resume. Now, moving on, the resume flow, how your document should look like. Now, first thing, there is no industry standard format of resume. I get these questions from some of the candidates I know of that, hey, is my resume good? Is it a right document that I have created? Is the format correct? So remember, folks, there is no industry standard format of your resume. The IT industry or the software industry has not defined any standard. It is a free flow document. So it is up to you how you create the document. It can be a PDF or a Word document. Both of them work really well as long as it carries the right information. Now, you can start with your name and contact information at the top, as well as a LinkedIn profile. Then your education and your grades, your university college name, that should go next. And then you can have a placeholder for your technical skills. You can also categorize your technical skills. For example, my programming skills, my operating system skills like Windows, Unix, what all operating systems you might have worked, RTOS. Then you can have your databases listed. You might have worked with MySQL, Oracle, Microsoft SQL, then other tools and technologies. Like you might have set up Apache for yourself or any web server or Jira, Confluence, all these tools can go in there. But do categorize your technical skills clearly. Your academic project or any prior experience that you have or any internship. I would rate that your internship should go first, followed by your academic project. And then any other achievements or miscellaneous information. For example, you might have got any awards in your college, school, or during graduation, or any technical presentations that you might have done at conferences during your graduation, or any certifications like Java certifications, AWS certifications. Those can go there. Now, I again want to repeat the same thing, that this is one of the format that you can have for your resume. And then at the end, you can put in more personal details. Now, these personal details vary from region to region, geography to geography. Like, for example, I've seen in India that people putting in like their current location, their hobbies, and other things. Whereas in US, I've seen like people sticking only to very few bare minimum personal details there. Obviously, this is not going to be any deciding factor whether you will be called for the interview or not called for the interview. But this is good to have. Personal details section is good to have on your resume. So that's how your resume should look like. And as I said, there is no fixed format here. But in the next lecture, we are going to take a look at sample resume, and maybe you can copy one of that or create and upgrade that particular format. So that's it for this particular lecture, and see you in the next lecture. Thank you. Hi, welcome back again. In this lecture, we are going to check on different types of software organizations and how it defines your whole recruitment process or the hiring process, and how it is directly proportional to the complexity of your interview. So let's move on. So there are three categories of software organizations. First one is a product-based organization. The second is service-based organization. And the next is product and service-based, or something we call as a hybrid organization. So these are three broad categories of software organizations, and let's take a look at each one of them in detail. First, a product-based organization. Now, what's a product-based organization? A product-based company designs its own software product. It has an idea, it puts in lots of resources and money on it to convert that idea into a software product. And this is done even before any client, any customer, or any end user asks them. So this is something they do it voluntarily. They think that this product is something that people will need, and based on that, they convert that idea into a software product which can be used by its end user. So as I said, once the product is developed, it is open to the market. Now let's take a few examples of product-based organization. The most and very common example that I give is the Windows operating system. Now, Windows operating system came into existence or was developed by Microsoft, and then it was marketed to the end users. Before that, nobody could even think that there could be something like Windows I need, and then if I could have a start button, and then I could see the applications installed. So the end users could not think of it, but then Bill Gates and his team, I think they worked on this terrific idea and they made it converted into a reality. Also, Amazon, AWS Cloud, or even the Amazon Shopping app, or look at Apple. Nobody asked for iPhone. There were other phones, but iPhone was altogether a different idea. They put in a lot of money, research, resources on it, and then they came up with a fantastic product called iPhone, which is a super hit product. So one thing to note here is the product-based organizations are not necessarily a software organization. It can be a combination of software and hardware. For example, Apple in this case is a combination of the iOS operating system and the iPhone, which is a combination of hardware and software, or same iPad or Mac also. Now look at Google search. Amazing product. We cannot even think of any search engine other than Google nowadays, right? So these companies, Google, Facebook, or even your games, PUBG, or even Netflix for the matter of fact, or Spotify, all these are very interesting products, highly popular all over the world, millions and billions of consumers are using them. Now, all these product companies had an idea in their mind and they really made it working. So that's how product companies work. But then the thing is, the product companies hire very limited talent because they need very few but highly skilled resources. They do not need thousands and thousands of people to work on the product idea. What matters to them is that the researcher should be highly skilled. He may be from an IIT or MIT or Berkeley. Each individual is highly skilled. Now, once that idea is conceptualized and discussed and the design is ready end to end, after that they might need more people. So that's where like freshers like you come into picture. But again, they do not approach any college or any university. They are very choosy when they approach any college or university. Each college has to have a reputation when they decide that I want to hire graduates, fresh graduates from this particular college. So the point to note here is they hire very limited talent. The difficulty level of the interviews is very high in product-based organization. You saw these products, right? And you have used these products. So the thought process, the idea, the usability of the product is really amazing. So they need really very good brains to work on this product. People who can think on their own, and not only that, people who can contribute to their product. That's how they are thinking when they are hiring fresh graduates. So the difficulty level of the interview is high. It could be data structures, complex programs, operating system core knowledge, writing pseudocode, writing codes in shell script, Python, and then the number of rounds they have during the interview is also very high in number. Like for example, in product organization, I heard like Google, Microsoft, the interviews go for 2 days or 3 days. It's not that you're sitting 8 hours for an interview, but it could be like you have 2 3 rounds today and again a couple of rounds more on the next day and a couple of other on the third day. The difficulty level is very high, but then the rewards are also very high. These companies are very innovative, so you would definitely like the work. You will find it interesting. You get higher salaries, perks, benefits, and definitely a brand name. So imagine you're telling your friends, "Hey, I got an offer from Facebook or Google or Microsoft." I see a lot of these posts on LinkedIn. I really feel good when people post that, and sometimes I think it's their dream job that they achieved. So that's what product-based organizations are, and your interview preparation should be really, really good when you're facing a product-based organization. So these are very few select names that I have on the screen. There are many such small and big product organizations, and the interview difficulty level really does not change there. It is still little high, even if the product organization is small or even if it's a startup, they really need good talent. Moving on, the next category is a service organization. Now, compared to product, where a product company has its own idea and converts into a software product, the service organizations are a little different. Service-based companies, they work for a client. And when a client approaches them with a specific need or requirement, they take that requirement and then they convert it into a software product. For example, I'll give you an example which is very relevant to the graduates or freshers. Let's say your college or university needs a software to manage all the student data. They need to manage all the staff data, and then they need to manage all your exams, your mark sheets, your grades, and then like all that fee modules, who's paid what fees, who is overdue, all their expenses. So this is a requirement of a university. Now there is no ready-made software for this. So this is where exactly the services organization come into picture. Now your university has to approach a services company, and then they give their requirement, and then the requirement analysis is done, then it goes into design, and then a lot of people are put on there to work, and finally the product is delivered. So that's what service organization is. Now a service organization is a mass recruiter in campus placements. So if you go to countries like India, Infosys, TCS, Wipro, Cognizant, they literally go to tens and fifteens of colleges and hire thousands and thousands of fresh graduates. Now, why do they hire thousands of graduates? Is because the scale of the projects that they get is so high that they need more number of people to deliver in less number of time. Now, here they compromise on the intellectual level of the candidates. So they are not always looking for very bright fresh graduates. They go by an understanding that, you know, I can go ahead with a low to medium difficulty level of my interview, but I'm fine if the candidate has some spark. That's what they think of. Why do and how do they adjust to this? The thing these service organizations do is once they hire thousands of these fresh graduates, they have their own training program. So once you join a services company like Infosys or TCS in India, or even for the matter of fact Accenture, they have a 2 month or 3 month training program for the fresh graduates, so that everybody's knowledge is same, everybody is at the same level, and everybody can see the organization from the same eyes. So that's why they hire so many candidates, and then they invest a lot in training these candidates. So interview level in these service organization, the difficulty level is low to medium. And the industry wide packages or salaries offered by the service organizations are average to high, I would say. And because these projects are given by a third party client, sometimes you will need to travel to third party locations or out of your country to work on these projects. That's why you see a lot of people moving from India to US or UK to work on client side projects on H1B visa or L1 visa. That's the whole reason of this. Now, example of certain services organizations are Accenture, Infosys, TCM, IBM. There are a lot many services organizations, literally in thousands or millions, I would say, small and big. But this is what service organizations do. They take a requirement, understand it, and deliver as per their customer need. Now, the third category of organization is a mix of services and product. They have their own R&D center for their products, and at the same time, they have a services unit or hierarchy which caters to the services of customers. Example, IBM. Now, IBM is a very big giant. It has its own R&D center also, and at the same time, there's something called as IBM Global Services, which caters to the customer needs. Same with Mastercard or Visa. They have their own products, but they also cater to the other banking needs also. So this is what product, service, and a hybrid organization work. Now, in a product or service, in case of a hybrid organization, your interview level will again depend upon whether you are appearing for the R&D level of that or R&D department of that organization or the services department of that particular organization. So that's it for this particular lecture. And thank you and see you in the next lecture. Hi, welcome to this lecture of organization hiring process. In this lecture, we will take a look at the backend activities that an organization does when it goes into a hiring mode. We have seen in the last lecture that a product organization has less number of positions or pretty fixed number of positions, whereas a services-based organization is pretty open to hiring a huge number of fresh graduates. But the good news is that they want to hire someone, and it could be you or your friend or somebody else. Now let's take a look at the overall hiring flow. First, create a job description. Now this is what the technical manager in the software company does. He creates a job description which has the requirement that we are looking for someone with so and so skills who has worked on so and so tools. But in case of freshers, this job description is pretty optional because they do know that you do not have a prior experience. But they do might have certain criteria that your grades might be above certain level, and then only you can appear for the test and the interview. or you could be from any engineering background, or you can be only from the computer or the IT engineering background. So these are the kind of certain conditions they lay down when they hire fresh graduates. Second thing, scan resume and filter. Once they publish a JD in the newspaper or maybe online, then they invite the resumes, which is where exactly you guys send in your resume. And these resumes are scanned by a team of resources there. It could be the HR or the technical resources team. They scan the resume, they filter the ones that they like, and then they send out an invitation letter. So the invitation could be to appear for an aptitude test or an online technical test, which is again a filtration round. So the first filtration round is your resume. The second filtration round could be your aptitude test or the online technical test. Because of COVID nowadays, most of the organizations are opting for an online technical test. Once you clear the test, then you are actually called for the interview rounds. Now, each interview round could be a filter round. So, for example, if you do not clear the first round, they might not call you for the second round. Now, this does not happen in each organization. Some organizations like to take 2 or 3 rounds, and then what they do is the technical panel they sit together, they discuss all the candidates, especially if it's a product organization. They discuss the candidates, and then they might want to filter and ask some of the candidates to go home, and the rest of them can continue with the interview. And then this optional step, assignment discussion. So I have seen it in some organizations, and I have also done this practically, that I found a candidate who was okay, uh, like kind of average. I was confused whether I should hire him or not, but rather than rejecting him, I gave him a Python assignment. And I asked him to complete that assignment, that particular coding problem statement, and come back. And when he came back with that assignment, then the interview happened on that particular piece of code that he had written. Now, again, this is an optional step. Some organizations do it, some do not do it. But if at all you are asked to, if at all you are given an assignment, it's important that you do that piece of code on your own, and you should be able to explain each line in that code. Why did you choose to use that particular logic there? Why did you use to choose two for loops instead of one? Is there any better way to optimize this piece of code? What are the flaws in this particular piece of code? You should have all these thoughts in your mind before you submit that assignment and again appear for the technical round. This is very important. Then, followed by this, if you clear all the technical rounds, then comes the HR round. Now, here is the difference between a product organization and a service organization. In product organization, what I have seen is that the HR round is basically a formality where they explain you the organization perks, benefits, and it's just a formality because the technical round manager has already cleared you. So it's very much clear that you are being hired actually there. But in case of a services organization, the HR round can also be an elimination round. So that's where it gets a little tricky with services based, because in case of services, they do pay more attention to your communication, presentation. Not that they don't do it in product, but typically in services, I have seen that HR round is also an elimination round there. Okay, and at the end, sometimes they again go for an internal discussion. If it's only one position and multiple candidates clear the round, then the organization itself is bound to hire one candidate. So that's where all the technical panel, interview panel sits, and they discuss who was the best candidate, and then the offer is rolled out. Now, these are the instances where exactly some people come to me and say, "Hey, I cleared all the rounds, but unfortunately, they did not offer me." Understand that an organization has sometimes its own limitations. They simply cannot say, they simply do not want two people to be hired. They just had one open position, and that's why even if 2 or 3 people clear the round, only one of them is bound to get an offer, the other two will be rejected. Here your luck factor plays an important role, I would say, and obviously your preparation also matters. So, and at the end, an offer letter is rolled out to you. It's up to you to accept the offer. If you have multiple offers, feel free to let the organization know well ahead in advance that you won't be able to accept the offer. Do not uh, let the HR, do not keep the organization waiting for a longer time till the end, in case if you have multiple offer letters. So that's about the organization hiring process. I hope you like this particular lecture, and see you in the next lecture. Thank you. Hi, welcome to this lecture for interviewers mindset. In this lecture, we are going to try and understand how each interviewer can be different from another. Let's say, for example, you give two rounds of interview, the first round and the second round. What you will notice is that in the first round, the interviewer was altogether a different person. He was trying to judge you in a different way. And in the second round of interview, it was altogether a different experience. The interviewer was again different. The ways, techniques he used to judge and evaluate you were totally different. Now, why does this happen? This happens because of human psychology. Each person in this world is different, and the way they judge things is different. One thing that you like might not be liked by others. That's how it works in the interview also. So it's important to take a look at what an interviewer thinks in the interview about you and how they judge you. And that's what this lecture is about. Now, here's a fun fact. No matter what kind of interviewer you are sitting in front, they definitely want to hire you. It works both ways. As desperately you're looking for a job, the same desperation is at the side of the organization as well. I say that because in the organization there are open positions, there are projects to be worked upon, they need resources, and that's why they are recruiting you. So if you have any fear, any doubt about the interview, I think you should remove that and understand that the need is at the both ends, at your side as well as the organization side. Now let's take a look at the type of interviewers. The first one, tell me what you know versus what I want to hear kind of interviewer. By this, what I mean. Now, there would be some interviewers who are very patient. They listen to each and everything that you are trying to tell, trying to answer, the way you answer, the way you try to explain the concepts. They'll listen very neatly, patiently to you. Why they do that? That's because they want to try and understand things from your angle. They know that he's a fresh graduate or even if it's a lateral, they try to understand from your point of view. But there is this other kind of interviewer who is thinking that, hey, that's not what I wanted to hear. And he's thinking in his mind that, you might have explained a particular operating system concept, and he's thinking that's not exactly what I wanted to hear. So these are two different kinds of interviewers here. Now, you'll get to know this during the interview itself. The moment you answer something, he'll keep on asking, and what else? Like he'll say, what else? Or did you miss anything there? So if you see interviewer asking for more clarifications or more to the point answers, he is most likely the second category of interviewers who wants to hear what is in his mind versus the other person who is open to any free flow answer to the question he has asked. Now let's take a look at the second type of interviewer when it comes to coding. Now, asking to write a piece of code or a program is very common nowadays. Let it be a software developer role or a software tester role, you will definitely be asked to write a piece of code, which we are going to see in the subsequent lectures how you can write a better piece of code. Now, coming back to the interviewers, there are certain interviewers who are okay with a pseudocode, whereas there will be some other interviewers who will ask you to write the full code. And if I refer back to my original lecture where we discussed a product based organization difference versus a service based organization, this point has and can be directly related to the type of organization you are sitting in. If it's a product organization, most likely and very highly likely, I would say, they'll ask you to write the full code. But if it's a service-based organization, I think they will be fine even if you are able to write a pseudocode there. Or even if you are able to explain the logic, I think you can clear the round in a services-based organization as long as the logic or the pseudocode does the job that was asked in the question. So this is the pseudocode interviewers versus the write full code interviewer category. Now, having said that, let's take a look at the most important aspects. How does an interviewer judge you apart from the technical skills? Now, you might be giving all those technical answers very good, writing that code, but they also rely on other data points when they are trying to judge you. And here's a few of them. First thing, your ability to understand complex problem statements. Now we have a mock lecture coming up very soon in the next in the next subsequent lectures where I'm going to give you a problem statement, a programming problem statement, and I'm going to just repeat it once. And it's a complex problem statement there. And then I'm going to judge you what exactly were you able to make from that problem statement. This is exactly what the interviewer does in the interview. Deliberately, he's going to put up a complex problem statement and try to gauge how much you can understand there. That's because when you are working on a project, you'll definitely face complex problem statements, and your ability to understand and work on those does matter. The next point, your give up attitude. Let's say you are asked to write a piece of code, or maybe he gives you a puzzle to solve. If you are giving up in 1 minute or 30 seconds, you have a really fast give up attitude. That's what he's thinking. Personally, I would recommend, even if you don't know the answer, keep on trying for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes un- until and unless the interviewer says it's fine. Or maybe the interviewer himself will say, "Hey, what are you thinking? Can you think loud? Or can you tell me what thoughts are coming to your mind?" At that point, you can try and explain him what are you thinking. But do not give up very easily. Do not give up in 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. If you are given a problem statement, if you are asked to write a piece of code, or if you are asked to solve a puzzle. You might not be good at solving puzzles or mathematics. Still keep on trying. Remember, try to recall your college concepts. Try to write something on the piece of paper on which you're trying to solve the puzzle. But that attitude of yours of trying to solve the problem should be seen. The next point, generic attitude. I would say a casual attitude. That is something you should avoid. Like, for example, since most of the interviews nowadays are on Zoom because of the COVID situation, you're appearing in front of the interviewer, sitting in front of the interviewer on your camera, and then you get a phone calls in between the interview. That's a very casual attitude. You should turn off or put your phone to silent mode, right? Or you're asking him to pause and answering to some questions in your to your family members. That is really casual attitude. The seriousness is missing here. So try to stay and focus on the interview. Uh, in in the interview, my bad, sorry. So try and stay focused while the interview is going on and avoid all kind of divergence there. Conflict handling. Now, there are interviewers who will deliberately pick up a conflict. Like, let's say, for example, you give an answer and he'll say that's not the right answer. Maybe like, what's the primary key or what is the foreign key? And maybe he'll deliberately argue that that's not what the answer is. That's not a foreign key. So, how do you react to that? That is very important. Maybe you try to give some examples, draw a schema, and then explain this is what is foreign key. But do not get into a conflict. Stick to your answer, and when you stick to your answer, it shouldn't look like a conflict. You shouldn't come too hard on the interviewer, and that is what exactly the interviewer is looking for. If you're going to come too hard there. The next point, your overall communication skills, the way you answer questions, the way you write code, the way you present yourself, that is also being watched. Now, this would matter more in a services organization and has a little less weightage in the product organization, I would say. That's because in product organization, most of the roles are an individual contributor role. They call it as an IC role. So when you are in an individual contributor role, it's most likely that you are working on a particular project alone or a particular module very alone. But that doesn't mean that you have that. But that doesn't mean that very bad communication skills are going to work here. So that's about the interviewer. So that was about your attitude, give up attitude that the interviewer was watching for. The next thing he's watching for is your questions. So remember the first point we talked where he's putting a complex problem statement. He's actually expecting questions from you, and then he's checking whether you ask the questions which are relevant to the problem statement, and then he's able to make an impression that, hey, this guy, if he cannot understand the problem statement, he's coming up with the right set of questions. That's what he's thinking about. And at the end, he's also watching your overall communication skills. So there is a lot of communication that happens when you join the software industry or organization, communication over email, updating documents, talking face to face, giving presentations, talking over Zoom. So in the interview, he's also watching your communication skills. So this is about this particular lecture. I hope you liked this lecture and you got some good insights and you feel more confident when you sit in front of the interviewer. See you in the next lecture. Thank you. Hi, welcome back. In this technical preparation lecture, we'll touch base upon certain technical concepts of your software engineering, which you should be preparing before appearing for the technical rounds. So let us move on. So the first important thing that the technical recruiter is going to focus on is your academic project or your internship. So he's going to take a look at your resume. He'll obviously see the skills that you have mentioned in the resume. But the first question that he might start up is by asking, what was your academic project, or tell me about your academic project or the internship that you did in the last 6 months. So when this question comes to you, you should be thoroughly prepared to take on any additional questions around this particular topic. For example, be ready to draw and explain the design diagram. So let's say you did an internship or your academic project was pretty complex. So he's going to ask you to draw the architecture of that particular software product or the module that you guys developed. And then he's also going to ask you the inputs and outputs of that particular design diagram. So you should be in a position to explain that. Next, I would seriously suggest mug up all the technical details of the project. You don't want to be stammering when you are actually explaining your project. Next, what was the role in your team? Let's say you did internship in a software organization. So what was your role? Let's say you were doing an academic project in a team of 2 to 3 people. What was your role? You were a developer, a designer, or you had a mixed role of a designer and a developer and a tester. So clearly come up with your role in the interview. What modules you used? Let's say you did your project or your internship project in Python or Java or C++. So what all technical modules were involved in that particular implementation that you should clearly highlight in response to the answer to this question? And expect more questions when you mention that I use the TCP module or I use the graphics module. He's for sure going to come back and ask in detail about those modules. So you should prepare that the usage of that module in and out. Explain the algorithm. So certain projects or certain software implementations are very algorithm based. So if that is the case with your project or your internship project, you should prepare thoroughly the algorithm and the cases around it. Next. Now, at the end, he might also ask, like, okay, fine, you did this particular software implementation, but what is the limitation of this overall project? Or what else you could have done to make it better? You should have an answer ready for that. Okay, now we discussed this in the previous lectures also. List only those skills that you can answer questions on your resume, because when he's sitting in front of you, he has your resume in your hand, in his hand, and he's taking a look. Hey, this guy knows C, or this guy knows Python, or he's very good at Selenium or API testing. So he's going to shoot questions on these skill sets. So I just wanted to touch base again on that particular topic, which we covered in the last lecture. That list only those skills which you can handle questions for. Now, it is very common to ask, write a code in the interview nowadays. Let it be a software developer role or a software tester role. For sure, you are going to be asked to write code. If the interview is face to face, or then he might give his laptop to you and ask you to code. In that case, you will have to start coding in any editor that he has on his laptop. If the interview is on Zoom or Skype, and if you are sharing your screen, then make sure that you always have your editor also ready. Now, it could happen that certain interviewers, they ask you to write the code in Notepad, but feel free to ask the interviewer that, hey, can I use Eclipse? If you're working on Python and then you want to use PyCharm, ask for permission first that can I use PyCharm or can I use Eclipse for this particular code? If he says yes, fine, go ahead and use it. Else, ask him which editor you can use. Next, use comments in your code. So if you're writing a piece of code which is very complex, then make sure you put in comments there. Don't put comment for every line of the code. Comments are to be used where the code is complex, or if someone else is looking at the code, that comment should help him to understand that particular logic. That's where comments come into picture. Use proper naming standards for variables and methods. Do not use A, B, C, X, Y, Z as variable names. Give them some proper meaningful names in your code, so that the interviewer is really impressed that with all your commenting and the naming standards that you have followed, he really sees that you are a very good programmer. Now, this was about writing code and the skills that you should prepare and about your resume. Moving on to the next slide. The preparation does not stop on the first slide. The preparation still continues. Now, let's say you're appearing for a product organization. We discussed that in case of a product organization, the difficulty level of interviews is going to be really high. So you can expect data structures. So you need to prepare all lists, trees, stack, queues, binary trees. You should also know how to implement them using your code. And then he's obviously going to ask you about the time complexity of the program that you have implemented. So you should be aware of the time complexity concepts and how you can reduce the complexity of the code that you have written. Then, if you are appearing for a product or service-based organization, puzzles is a very common thing. The puzzle complexity of the puzzle also depends upon what round of the interview you are. Like first round interview, the puzzle might be easy. If you are appearing for a technical higher manager role, then the complexity of the puzzles might be very high. But make sure you go through the puzzles on the internet, or there are a lot of puzzle books, logical puzzle books. Make sure you solve them, practice them before you appear for the interview. The next thing, focus to solve logical programming problems. And this is applicable to QA roles also. One thing the interviewer is for sure is that he wants to understand whether you can solve the logical problems. Now, what does that mean? For example, he will ask you program that needs you to use two for loops. For example, binary sorting. You need two for loops there. So if you are really able to implement two for loops, he thinks you can think logically well. Again, recursions. Let's say the Fibonacci series. You might implement it without the recursion or with recursion, but sometimes some interviewers ask you to convert the code that you have written into a recursion. Can you use a recursion here so that the number of lines of code can be reduced? Then printing. It's a very common scenario to ask for pattern printing in the interviews. Like for example, hey, I want the output to be something like this: one star on the first line, 2 stars on the second line, 3 stars on the third line, 4 stars on the fourth line. So this is called as pattern printing. So he might give you a pattern like, let's say, a triangle pattern or a square pattern or any pattern that he has in his mind, and he'll ask you to write a code which will print, whose output will be similar to the pattern in the question. Then string operations without built-in methods. So most of the time during the interviews, the interviewers will refrain or restrict you from asking to use the built-in methods. For example, let's consider this string a program. He says there is an input string and the output should be the reverse of that particular string. Now there are built-in methods in almost every programming language to reverse the string, but the focus is not that. He wants to understand whether you can reverse the string without using built-in methods. So in C language, you'll have to actually parse the string and then maybe use stack or an array to maintain that string and then print it in the reverse order. Same in the case of Python also, it's very easy to reverse the string using built-in methods, but how do you do it without using built-in methods is where your actual skill sets are shown to the interviewer. The next, list operations, map operations, dictionary operations, especially in case of Python, dictionary operations, and a lot of programming questions around dictionaries and lists you can expect. So make sure when you prepare, you cover these data types in your preparation. Next, moving on, mathematical problems. So what I mean by this, so for example, you might be given, let's say the interviewer says that the input is a decimal number and I want to print the binary output of this number. So that's a mathematical problem. So, or it could be reverse way. I have a binary input and I want to print the decimal number of that binary input. You need to understand these mathematical concepts also. Especially, I would say, do prepare around binary operations, or how do you convert binary to decimal, decimal to binary. The next thing is regular expressions. Now, this thing is really good to have, but I'm pretty sure not everybody goes well with regular expressions. What is a regular expression? What are the different expression operators that are available? But in case of Python, I think Python or Java, if you have a bit of exposure, that is definitely going to help you. Then file operations. This is again one of the most common interview questions. Like maybe they'll ask you to read something from the file and then create a new file with specific characters omitted or specific words omitted. A different kind of file operations, like there is an existing file and you want to append something. So all these file operations based on the programming language, sometimes it can be really tricky, sometimes it can be very easy. So these are the things you should really focus on. Bare minimum things I think you should focus on in your technical interview preparation. Moving on, what else he can ask? What else you can expect in the interview uh, apart from technical questions? Now, some of the interviewers like to understand that when you do your graduation, how good you have completed your graduation. So he's in a mood to check, like, are you really good with the basic concepts? For example, Unix commands. So most of you have Unix in your curriculum, your academic curriculum. So do you really know Unix basic commands, top command, ls command, the like IP address? How do you check IP address of the Unix machine? How do you copy files? And how do you find files of a specific size using the find command, the grep command? So make sure you at least brush up your Unix commands. Then the second thing is the database queries and concepts. So database is also a part of the academic curriculum almost everywhere in the world. So basic insert operations, difference between the primary key and a foreign key, uh, different types of joins, inner join, outer join, what is the difference? You yourself should be able to take an example, let's say an employee table, having a join with a department table, practice it at home before going for the interview. How will the join query look like? Moving on to the next, the networking concepts. Again, a very prominent topic in your academic, throughout your academic. What's an IP address? What are the category classes of IP addresses? TCP model versus OSI model. What's the difference between TCP and UDP protocols? These are basic things I think which is expected from any software graduate. Then operating system concepts. What's paging? What is swapping? The LIFO and FIFO algorithms. You should brush again if you really are not able to recall these concepts before you appear for the interview. And at the end, lastly, I wanted to you to request is that go to HackerRank, sign up, and practice as many coding examples you can there. So start from the beginner level, then go to the intermediate level, and daily at least try to solve 2 programs on HackerRank. It is going to improve your logical reasoning skill, and you will yourself feel that you are very good at getting very good at solving complex logical programs, and that is definitely going to help you during the coding round. So that's it for this lecture. See you in the next lecture. Thank you. Hi, welcome back. In this lecture, I am going to ask you to write a piece of code on your computer or your laptop and run it. It is going to be a programming problem statement, and you have to solve it. The evaluation and explanation of your code program will be done in the next lecture, and I'm going to do something on purpose. On purpose, I will read the question in a way that most of you won't understand the question clearly. And I'm going to do it on purpose. So that doesn't mean that this lecture is bad and I'm explaining in a bad way. I'm going to do it on purpose. And why I'm going to do it that way, we're going to discuss that in the next lecture as well. So moving on to the problem statement or the programming question in the next slide. Here's the coding question. Find the first positive integer whose sum of digits is 10, starting from the input number given by a user. For example, if the user input is 10, then the first number which comes after 2 whose sum of digits is 10 is 19. So your program should print 19. Another example, if the input number given by the user is 15, the first occurrence of the number whose sum of digits is 10 is 28. So this is the exact coding problem statement I want you to solve. Write a piece of code in Python, Java, C, whichever language you are good. And then we'll see how the interviewer is going to look at your program and what kind of changes he's going to ask you to make. That we are going to do in the next lecture. So see you in the next lecture. Please do write the code for your own good. Thank you. Hi, welcome back. Let's continue with our coding example. I hope everybody was able to solve the program, and some of you have found some mistakes in the program that I have given in the last lecture. Nevertheless, let's move ahead and understand the problem statement again. So the problem statement was that find the first positive integer whose sum of digits is 10. So when I say sum of digits, it means that you have to add the digits of that particular number. For example, consider the number 12. So 1 plus 2 is 3. So we are looking for a number whose sum of the digits is 10. For example, 19. 1 plus 9 is 10. So we have to find the first number whose sum of the digits is 10 based on the input given by the user. Let me clarify one more time. If the user input is 2 to the program, let's say the user inputs 2 as an input, the program starts scanning from 2 and onwards, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and so on, till it encounters the first number whose sum of the digits is 10. In this case, the first number that it encounters is 19. If you look at the number 19 and add the digits 1 plus 9, that is 10. Now here's the surprise part. If you give user input as 15, in the last lecture I told that the output should be 28, which is wrong. The output will be 19 because after 15, the first number whose sum of the digits is 10 will be 19 and not 28. Obviously 28 is also 2 plus 8 is 10, but 19 comes before 28. Now I did it on purpose. And those of who got this problem statement correctly, congratulations. Those of you who didn't understand the problem statement, congratulations to you as well, because now you're going to learn how to handle this particular situation. So let's move on. What you should have done in this case. The first thing you should ask yourself, did you understand the problem statement? The moment the interviewer gives you this problem statement and asks you to code, you should ask yourself, did you understand the problem statement? What is expected? If not, ask for clarification to the interviewer. Can you explain me the problem statement again with more examples? This is what you can ask him, or whatever suits you. Like, ask him the way you want to. Like, I did not understand the problem statement. Can you give me more example? And let him explain again and pay attention this time. Now, let's say he says n for this. In this case, the second input n is equal to 15. I had given the wrong output. If you figure it out that the interviewer is looking at the wrong output, feel free to highlight to him and tell him that when the input is 15, 28 cannot be the output. In fact, the output will be 19. He'll be more than happy to accept your answer, and he'll know that you have actually got the problem statement. So the net summary in this case is, if you didn't understand the problem statement, ask for clarifications. And in case if there is some ambiguity between what the interviewer is telling by himself, he's giving a wrong example, feel free to highlight that as well. Next thing, call out for any assumptions you are making. So let's say you start coding and you are assuming that it will be only a two-digit number. In this case, the input number that the user will give will only be two digit. Call out that assumption before you start coding. Then the next thing, don't rush to complete the code. Some of you might not be aware, but it's totally okay to take even 15 minutes to write the piece of code. You might be thinking that you're taking more time, but that is not the case at all. Some coding examples, especially if you're appearing for a product-based organization, the problem statements are really complex. Like, let's say, data structure or linked list examples, they will be complex. They cannot be written in 5 minutes. So it's fine, take 15-20 minutes based on the examples. And what is going to happen when you're coding is that the interviewer is going to check on you. He might ask you to show what you have written, and he'll just take a look at your screen if you're sharing it on Zoom or Skype. He's continuously watching you. Or he might also ask you to think aloud, or think or maybe in between try to ask you like, hey, what's this for loop for, or what is this particular variable doing? That is totally fine. But the net summary is that do not rush to complete the code. Take your time and try to write a good code. Try to add those comments, good variable names, good function names, and then complete the code. Now, let's say you are using your own editor, PyCharm for Python or Java, Eclipse for Java. And if you want to run the program, actually run the program, then ask for permission. Do not run without asking him. Some interviewers do not like it. It's fine that you are using an editor of your choice, but sometimes if you run and debug, then you can actually solve the problem, but they really want to know how you have written it in the first place. So ask for permission before you run and debug. Okay. And check on multiple inputs and output before you tell the interviewer that, hey, I am done. And in case if you are in position, if the interviewer says, okay, run and debug it, and then let me know. Test it for multiple inputs. So in this case, you can test it for 2 as an input, 50 as an input, 75 as an input. So have you done that when you came to this lecture? That's one question I wanted to ask you. How much time you took to write this particular program? Ask yourself. Okay, did you make any assumption when I gave you the problem statement? Ask yourself. Did you understand the problem statement? No. Did you think of, I should ask in the next lecture what this particular problem statement was, or I was not clear on this problem statement? So this is what you should think. Now moving on to the next slide, we are still continuing with this coding problem statement, which is input is n is equal to 2 and the output is 19. Now here's what the interviewer is going to do next. Let's say you write this piece of code and it is running fine. Now he's going to test your ability to make changes to an existing solution. And what he's going to do, first thing, he's going to ask you, like, does your program work for a 3-digit or 4-digit input? Like, let's say I give the input as 100. In this case, I am expecting output to be 109 because 1 plus 0 plus 9 is 10. So guys, folks, the program that you have written before coming to the lecture, is it working for a 3-digit input or a 4-digit input like 1000? If not, I think go ahead and make the changes and make the program working for any input. That's how you should do it. He's going to ask you to make one, he can ask you to make one more change. Now, the initial problem statement said that print the first number whose sum of the digit is 10. Now he can ask you to change the program. Hey, skip the first number. I want the second number whose sum of the digits is 10. So if the input number is 2, 19 is not going to be output. In that case, 28 will be the output because we are going to skip the first number whose sum of digits is 10. And we are going to look for the second number whose sum of the digits is 10. So in case of input 2, the output will be 28. Can you guys change that program for yourself? How much time you are going to take for that? That is something I really want you to evaluate after this lecture. So do take a note of these two questions, whether your program works for 2 or 3 or 4-digit input, and can you change the program to print the second number from the given input. Now here's the tricky one. Why second? I want to print the nth number from a given input. How do I make the changes to the program? So every time I cannot keep on changing, right? Second number or third number from the given input of the user. So maybe you can accept the input from the user itself that, hey, do you want to print the second number whose sum of the digit is 10 or the third number whose sum of the digit is 10? So you can make the changes to the program accordingly. Now he's going to ask you the time complexity of the code, particularly in the case where you are using while loops, multiple for loops, a data structure linked list program. He's going to ask you what is the time complexity of the program. This might be very common question in product organizations, maybe not in the services based organization interview. That, hey, tell me the time complexity of the program. Let's say it is O of n or O of n square. He's going to ask you, hey, can you remove that while loop or 2 for loops and change it into single loop? Can you reduce the time complexity of your program? And that's where you'll have to go back to your code and start updating it again to reduce the time complexity. Okay, so that was about coming back to the original slide. So that was about how the interviewer is going to judge your code. In the first place, the code should be running, obviously. And then if at all you write the piece of code, he's going to make you change that piece of code. And he's going to test your ability to understand your own code and what changes it needs. Why he's going to do that? Because in most of the IT organizations, there's already a big chunk of code written. And when you're put on a particular project, sometimes it's not really something from scratch you're starting. It's already there and you have to understand the existing code and then start making changes to it. So that's where these questions, this ability to make changes to the code, you are being tested for. Now, in the resources section, I have some links to websites where they have lots of algorithms and coding questions. So do check it out. I'm not affiliated to any of the links that are there in the resources section, but I thought it should be handy to you. Some of you might already know those particular websites. Then there is also a link to the website which has lots of questionnaire bank that were asked in the interview at different organizations. So do take a look at that as well. Then I have this HackerRank link where you can go and try to solve coding problems. I have a link for basic concepts of software testing. And there's also a link to the answer to the question that is asked in this lecture. So the actual code, you can find it in the link in the resources section. So the summary of this whole lecture is, first, don't give up easily on the coding question. Let's say you're not able to write that piece of code. You tried something, but it's not running. Or worst case, really the worst case, that you are not able to write the code, but you know the logic. So ask for permission, Can I explain you the pseudocode? This will definitely work in services organization, maybe not work in the product organization. I'm being a little frank here. But in services, you can at least try to explain the pseudocode, what kind of logic, for loops, what you would do in the for loop or in that particular method. You can try explaining to the interviewer. Second, add comments and proper naming convention. Follow all the coding guidelines here when you're writing the piece of code to make a good impression. Third, ask questions to the interviewers rather than making assumptions. So we already discussed that if you didn't understand the problem statement or if you're going ahead with certain assumption, it could be a big program of a file operation program or a mathematical problem statement, which might need you to make an assumption. It's very highly likely. So call out that assumption and then go ahead. Uh, for example, in my cases, most of the candidates ask me, can I assume that the input is in a variable X, or I have already read the file and it is in a string variable named file content. To which sometimes I'm say, okay, let's do that. Let's keep the reading the file input and move on to the core logic of the program. That's one thing. Fourth point, ask for permission to run and debug the code. Not every interviewer is comfortable with that, as I said. So ask for permissions. You can put the breakpoints, debug your code if you have written the code and the output is not correct. Debug it, fix it, run it again, and then show it to the interviewer. And last, if you know unit testing, ask if you should add the unit test cases to the program. If you're good with NUnit, JUnit, or Python's unit testing, ask to the interviewer, should I add the unit test cases to this? He's going to say no for that most likely, but he'll be impressed with that. Trust me on that. So that's it's about this coding or software developer or software testing coding example interview session. And see you in the next session, guys. Thank you. Hi, welcome back. In this lecture, we will discuss about the technical preparation that you need to do if you are appearing for a software tester role or a software QA assurance role in a company. Gone are the days when software organization used to hire manual testers. Nowadays, even the product organization and the service organizations expect that software testers can also code and they can write better test case scenarios. So, in short, if you look at the job openings of organizations like Microsoft, Amazon, Flipkart, or Facebook, you will find that they mention the role as a SDET role. SDET stands for Software Development Engineer in Test. Now, what that means is that you need to be a development engineer in the testing area. That clearly tells you that you need to code and automate. And even the services organization expect people to code and automate because nobody wants to do manual testing a lot. It's a boring job. You yourself will get uh, bored of it. There is no innovation there. So if you know coding, you can automate lot number of your automation and testing activities. So as I said, expect to write code. If you haven't gone through my last lecture where we went through a mock interview scenario where a coding interview question was given, I urge you to go back and attend and complete that lecture also because that applies to the software test engineering interviews also. Moving on. So the software testing concepts are basics. Prepare them. I know that you guys are fresh graduates, but sometimes if the opportunity comes and if you want to pursue, you should be aware of some software testing concepts. For example, what are the kinds of different testings? Functional testing, regression testing, performance testing, security testing, web testing versus Windows application testing, how both of them are different. What's a white box testing and a black box testing? What can be the examples of both? How both of them are different? Test case is basic. What is a test case? What are the ingredients of a test case? How do you write test cases? Which all tools are used for test case management? Then the automation tool, the most important part of software testing. What all automation tools are in the market? Which ones of them are very popular? For example, Selenium. Which automation tool is available in Python? In case of Java, is there any other automation tool? What are the performance testing tools available in the market? So having knowledge of these tools is definitely going to help you. I'm not saying that you go ahead and explore each one of these tools, but at least try to install and see how they work. You can definitely start with Selenium if you want to understand how do you automate UI or how do you automate browser-based testing. There are lots and lots of tutorials around Selenium, and it's pretty easy if you know Java or Python. It would be really good to know API testing. What is API testing? What's a JSON? because JSONs are very key ingredient of API testing. So you should be very good with JSONs. Try to create your own JSON examples. It will really come handy in the interviews. And you need to understand the concepts of API testing, what exactly it is meant for, what are the tools available for API testing. So these are some basics you can prepare for software testing. Then Selenium specific. So basically, there are a lot of job opportunities where Selenium is a key tool needed for UI automation or web testing. So if you want to learn Selenium, there are pretty bunch of resources available on the internet. I have also added some links in the resources section for you. But basically, you should cover how do you set up the test environment for Selenium on a Windows box versus a Unix box. Let's say with Selenium, you want to test Chrome browser and Firefox browser as well, or maybe Microsoft Edge or Internet Explorer. You can do all the three automation using Selenium. So how do you configure that in Selenium? Then there is something called as a developer panel or a developer tools in each browser. If you go to Chrome in the under the tools, you will find the developer option. It shows a number of options that happens when you load an web page. Try to understand the tabs on a developer panel. I'll try to include some links around that as well in the resources section. So this is the basics of software testing. So if you guys have done any certification around software testing, I think this is pretty easy to understand for you. If you have not done or explored anything around software testing, these are the basics you should touch base upon. So in the next lecture, what I'm going to give you is a test scenario. And then we'll see how you can appear for a mock software testing interview, what questions can come to you in the subsequent lectures. But make sure you prepare for the basics first, and then we'll go to the next lecture. Thank you for staying up with me in this lecture. Hi, as discussed in the last lecture, we are going to test your test case writing skills. Remember the program that we did in the lecture 10? If you have not done it, or if you have skipped it, I urge you to go back to lecture 10 and understand the program that we discussed, because we are going to write test cases for the same program. Now, it could happen in the interview that the moment you answer that coding question, the interviewer might ask you to tell the test cases for that particular program. Now, here's how it will be put up to you. So let's say you write the program. Now, the interviewer is going to ask you to imagine that you don't know the code, the system is black box to you. And what happens if you give an input, you get an output. So that's what the application is about. And he will ask you to write test cases for it. So let us understand that particular program again. And then I'm going to ask you to write test cases before moving on to the next lecture. So here's our original program and how the problem statement will be put to you. Write test cases for an application which takes number as an input and prints the first number it finds whose sum is 10 starting from the input number. Now this problem statement is exactly the same that we discussed in lecture 10. It is just that I have changed the wordings to make it look like a test case writing scenario. What I'm asking here you to do, imagine that you don't know the code of that particular program that we discussed in lecture 10. Instead, you have to think of the system as a black box where you give an input and the system prints an output. Now here the input is going to be, for example, the application is going to prompt the user, enter a number. Let's say the user gives an input 5. The output will be 19 because 1 plus 9 is 10. That's what the application does. Here's another example. The user gives an input as 25. The application is going to print an output as 28 because 2 plus 8 is 10. Now, as a tester, you have to think that the application is a black box. You know that the application takes input as a number and it prints output as a number based on certain calculation. And your goal is to test the application, whether if I give the number input as 5, it is really giving me an output as 19. If it is not giving me output as 19, it means the application is not doing its job. So as a tester, you have to write test cases to test this application. Let me help you with a test case. The first test case could be verify that the application gives correct output as 19 if my input number is 5. That is one test case. Verify that the application gives output as 108 108 number as output if my input number is 100. So here I have two test cases. In the first test case, I am testing for a single digit input number, and in the second test case, I am testing for a two-digit input number. Now I want you to think and write such one-liner test cases, and then we will discuss in the next lecture whether you have covered all of the test cases. When you write test cases, try to make them look like a test case. So maybe you can start with the wording verify or check the functionality. It should start with these wordings so that you know the goal of the test case is clear. Okay, so let's give it a try and let's discuss the actual test cases in the next lecture. And you can verify whether you have covered the ones that I am discussing in your test case document or not. Thank you. Hi, welcome back. Now that you have written the test cases that we discussed in the last lecture for this particular application, we will discuss in detail what test cases you should have written to cover the testing of this particular application. So we went ahead with the assumption that the application is a black box. You have the functional requirement that given an input, it gives a certain output based on the problem statement. So let's take a look at the test cases. First, you should have covered the positive test cases first. For example, I give an input number as 5 and it prints the output as 19. That's a positive test case. You're not trying to break the application by any negative test case scenario here. Negative test cases, if you don't know, are those test cases where you willingly and deliberately give some negative input to the application. Negative means not a negative number, I would say. Any input which the application is not supposed to receive, but you are deliberately giving that input to the application to make it crash or make it give wrong input and to verify that the application can handle such kind of negative scenarios. But first, you should definitely test for positive test case scenarios. So your positive test case scenario here is input number given as 5, the output expected is 19, or the input number given as 100, the output expected is 109. These test cases fall in the positive test case scenario bucket. Test for negative test case scenarios. This is the killing thing that is going to help you crack the interview. The more negative test cases you can think of, the interviewer would be happy, because it's imperative and it's you have to understand that when the applications are designed, they are supposed to do something based on a certain set of conditions. But what if those conditions go wrong? How is the application behaving? So in organizations, a lot of test cases are negative rather than positive. So what could be the negative test cases for the application or the program that you were given in the last lecture? First thing, what happens if I give a negative number as an input? What happens if I give -1? Will it give me the correct output? So you might think that, how do I know that? Now, generally, when an application is designed, there is a design document for it. If that covers that the application, that might cover this requirement that the application should ignore the negative numbers. Or what happens if you give a string as an input? Instead of a number, you give ABC characters as an input. The application should tell you that it's an invalid number. It would be written in the business requirements, and after reading the business requirement document, you have to come up with these particular negative scenarios. Or even if it is missing in the business requirement document, you need to talk to the developer and inform them that, hey, after I give this negative input, the application is crashing or it's not handling it gracefully. It should tell the user that, hey, that's not a good input and that's not how the application works. So basically, a graceful message should be shown on the screen by the application. Another negative input could be try to give a floating point number, let's say 1.7. Is the application able to handle it correctly and print the correct output? That's also a negative test case scenario. Now the boundary conditions. Now the boundary conditions is something you want to check. Like let's say we know that if I give input as 5, the first output is going to be 19. What if I give 19 as an input? Will the application print 28 or 19? That's a boundary condition, right? So you should think of these boundary conditions in your test cases. And these are very important conditions, test case scenarios. Second, cover the performance related test cases also. Put the application logic to stress test. For example, now you're just thinking about an input as 1 or 2 or 15 or 55. What if I give an input as 9,09,999? Will the application give me a number whose sum of the digits is 12? You have to actually give this input to the application and test it. Next, how will you automate these test cases that you have written? So the first job before automating is to have the test cases in place, and then you can do manual testing, and then someone can think of automating. So how will you automate this? Now, as fresh graduates, this can be a tricky question for you, but you can definitely answer in a way that we can have unit test cases around that, or then maybe you can have to use an automation tool which will give input as an application, read the output from the screen, or if it is dumped in some logs by the application, read the output from the logs and verify. That way you can automate. So these are the test cases you can think of. Now, one thing you have to understand is that the test case writing activity is a very exhaustive activity. There is no limit to the number of test cases you can come up. I can go on and on and on. So boundary conditions, or I can do bucketing also, right? So what if I give input number as 1, it is going to print 19. What if I give input number as 25, it is going to print 28. Now, both of these categories fall in the same bucket, right? I'm giving an input positive number and it's printing. What if I say I want to test for an input of a 3-digit number? What if I want to say I want to test for an input of a 5-digit number? If you think like this, you will have hundreds and hundreds of cases. So then you have to take a logical call that, hey, I'll check for an input from a range of 0 to 100, and maybe I'll check for an input for any number in the range of maybe 1,000 to 1 lakh. You know, so that your test cases are not too much, but again they ensure that you are covering and testing the application thoroughly, right? So these are the test cases you should think. Now you can compare with the test cases that you have written and see what were the gaps and try to fill in those gaps. Now, one of the important skills as a tester is the troubleshooting skills. So you should be able to troubleshoot a lot. Now, by troubleshooting, I mean that when you install the application, or let's say you're trying to set up Java Eclipse project and your code is not compiling, then you have to go in a troubleshooting mode, right? What exactly is happening? Are the library paths defined or set up correctly in the Eclipse? Or let's say you are trying to run a Python program and it says certain packages not found. So your test environment itself is not set up correctly. So then you need those troubleshooting skills, right? Or another way I can put up is, how would you troubleshoot if a website is not loading? That's what an interviewer can ask you. How would you troubleshoot? Let's say you open your laptop, turn it on, and try to go to google.com. And what if google.com is not loading? How will you troubleshoot? Right. So he's trying to think and check how you can troubleshoot these kind of problems. So let's say your google.com is not loading on your computer or your laptop or your mobile. How would you troubleshoot? One thing is definitely you should check for internet. It appears to be silly, but he's actually expecting that answer. We have internet connection. Are you connected to Wi-Fi? If you are connected to Wi-Fi, is the internet actually available or is it down? If the internet is okay, is the URL correct? Did you miss a O from google.com? Or is google.com really down? So that's how those are your test cases or troubleshooting steps. Correct. Let's take a look at another troubleshooting scenario. What if a server is not reachable? So let's say you are in your university lab and trying to send a file or trying to ping another computer and you're unable to reach the another server. So what could go wrong there? Again, your test cases could be, is a computer connected to a network? Is there a firewall on your computer that is preventing from sending the request outside? Is there a firewall on the server that is not allowing the request to reach to the server? Right. So these can be your troubleshooting steps. So as a tester, it's very important that you think of all this troubleshooting and all these test cases. So important thing is, think of the positives as well as the negatives. What can go wrong there? The moment you ask yourself these questions, a lot of test cases will come to your mind. Now, other test case scenario writing examples could be performance testing of an application. Performance testing, you should read about it, like what is stress testing, what is load testing, why is it done, how do you do performance testing, what kind of tools are there? Because like when Black Friday deals are up on Amazon.com, or here in India, let's say it's Diwali, the Flipkart comes up with big billion a day sale. Lots and lots of users are hitting that particular application. Now they need to ensure that the application, the server doesn't go down, and that's where performance testing comes into picture. So How is the application behaving if hundreds and hundreds or millions of users are hitting that particular application? So performance testing is also one of the core or area of software testing, and it depends on application to application. Not every application needs performance testing, but if you are expecting a lot of users to use the application, then performance testing should definitely be done. And then the results of performance testing are captured in the performance testing tool. Like the final outcome is that, hey, this application can handle 1000 users at a time, so you need to deploy this application on multiple servers if you are expecting more than 1000 users to be hitting the application, and then a load balancer is also needed to distribute the load. So that's performance testing. Even let's take another real world example, interview example. I try to ask my users, let's say you have this Amazon app. I think everybody knows the Amazon shopping app, and there's a search bar at the top of the Amazon app, right? Now, I normally ask the candidate, can you tell me the test cases for that search bar? Right. So I think everybody knows the Amazon app. So what can be the test cases? You need to think. Let me give you some hints there. Again, as I said, there is no limit to the number of test cases. I could miss some, but here's a few pointers to you. First thing is, if you're searching for something that is available in Amazon, let's say I type a mobile, it should give me that particular drop down, that mobiles in electronics or mobiles in the mobile section, and if I click that, it should take me to that particular section. If I type two words AMO, it shouldn't give me a drop down. But the moment I type the third word, it is expected to give me a drop down with the suggestions. Right. Now another test case could be, the Amazon app can be customized and changed to different languages, from English to French, German, or any other, Japanese, Chinese. So if I give input in a different language, is it giving me the suggestions correctly or not? What if the internet is down and I'm trying to type in the suggestions? How is the application behaving there? Right. And then as simple as that I should be able to delete my search term and put in the new search term there. The moment I go, and the search text box is empty, and the moment I touch or click there, it should show me the list of my previous searches. So I'm thinking all different angles, and the moment it shows the list of searches, if I select a previous search, click on it or touch on it, it should take me to that particular category, right? So that is how I'm thinking here. So that was a test case scenario. There could be many other examples which can think of, but the important thing is cover the positives, negatives, the boundary conditions, performance testing during your interview. So that was about a test case scenario, and I would like to see you in the next lecture where we are going to start with the HR interview questions. So thank you, and see you in the next lecture. Hi, welcome to this lecture of HR interview. In this lecture, we will talk about HR interview questions and answers to those questions. Most of you who do not know, HR stands for the Human Resources Team. This is the exact team of people who will schedule your interview. They'll also take your HR interview, and these are the same team members who will do the salary negotiations with you when they offer a job to you. As most of you know, HR interview is a non technical round. In a product based organization, HR interview is mostly a formality. The HR team will mostly discuss the offer and the benefits with you in the HR round. However, in a company or organization, HR interview could be an elimination round as well. So it does make sense to prepare yourself for the HR interview, practice and rehearse all the questions of HR interview. Most of the questions are about you only. There's nothing technical the HR person is going to ask. It's about what are your qualities, what do you like, what do you do not like. If you're sitting there in the interview room wondering what do you like and what do you do not like, I think that is not going to send a positive message to the interviewer. So let's take a look at few of the HR interview questions. The very first question in the HR interview, and in fact in the technical interview, is tell me about yourself, or give me a short description of yourself. And the sample answer this will be discussed in this lecture itself. But you need to understand first that when you answer this question, it should have less personal details. You should not talk about what kind of music you like or what is your movie preferences. That is not what the HR is looking about. Try to keep the answer more technical, and it should have more academic details, and it should talk about your achievements. At the same time, you do not want to go into too technical details while you give answer to this question. For example, my name is Ganesh, and I graduated from so and so university, and these were my grades. During my graduation, my academic project was this, and it involved so and so technologies. It was a team of 4 members, and I was a software developer in the team. And I also designed most of the software components of this particular project. At the same time, during my academic project, or during my academic career, I gave a paper presentation, and my one of this paper was also published in so and so newspaper or so and so website. If you have done internship, talk about it. Now, I did an internship for 6 months in so and so organization, and my roles and responsibilities during the internship were I was a software developer responsible for so and so module, and in addition to the software development, I used to talk to the clients a lot to understand their requirements, and I used to attend the calls with my manager, understand the customer feedback about the products, so that we can take those same requirements and put it in the product. This is just an example of how you can answer that question. Now, imagine when I was giving an example of how you can answer this question. Now, I took a lot of pauses there. Did it feel good? I think no, right? So you need to prepare and rehearse for a smooth start of this question, because this is the first question. You really want your interview to have a very smooth start. No hiccups, no breaks, straightforward answer, and do not. But please do not answer like a robot. The answer should sound very natural and shouldn't look like you have mugged it up. Now, there was a survey done some time back, and the results are also on the internet. You will find this, that most of the interviewers are likely to make a decision whether they should hire the candidate sitting in front of them within the first 2 3 questions or within the first 5 minutes of the interview. Now, this is more psychological because everybody tries to make an impression of the person sitting or standing in front of him, and based on the way he's communicating, they like or not like the person. Obviously, this is just a survey. We should not think that this is always the case that is going to happen with you. But you need to remember that you need to have a very really good smooth start. That was the question one. Let's move on to the question two. What are your past accomplishments? So since you are a fresher, you can talk about your academic achievements, like you're a college topper or a university topper, or you did a paper presentation. What was the paper presentation? How you prepared for it? How challenging was it to gather the data for the paper presentation, how well it was appreciated. You can talk about that. Talk about your participation in any technical events. So it could be that you attended a technical event or you were a participant of the technical event. What was the event about? What did you showcase there? You can talk about it. Talk about your academic project, what role you played, what kind of research you had to do, what kind of books you referred. You can talk about those also, how challenging it was to complete the particular project and how you overcome that challenge. Now, if you have led any campus event in your college or university, you can talk about it because it will reflect your leadership skills. So do give this example as well. At the end, if you are a part of any social group, you do social work, then I think you should also mention that as an accomplishment because that requires you to work in a team. So you can also highlight that you work in a team of 10 people and what kind of social work you do and how good you feel about it and how and you think that's a good accomplishment for you. So that is about question two. Let's move on to the question three, which is what are your strengths, or if I have to put it in another way, what are your positive qualities? So you can talk about these few qualities. First, I am a quick learner and generally I adapt to changing situations very quickly. Now, bear in mind that the interviewer might ask you for an example here, and you have to be ready with an example. For example, it could be that one of the projects needed me to learn Python or Java, and I was good with other language, but then I managed to learn Python quickly in a couple of weeks and delivered on that particular project. That can be one of the examples. Or it could be that someone asked to do a paper presentation on a certain topic, and the time was very less for that, but then you learned quickly researched that topic and presented it. Next, I am willing. I'm always willing and open to learn new things. So that is one thing that you can tell the interviewer, that you're always willing to learn new things and open to learn new things. Again, you'll have to give an example uh, to support this data if asked for. Next point, I am soft spoken and I have good oral communication and written communication skills, which I think is very essential for any corporate job. So soft spoken skills or your communication skills will automatically reflect while you are talking to the interviewer. But if it's about written communication skills, you might have to support with certain data. Maybe the paper presentations that you have done, or any articles that you have written on the internet or published on the internet. Last answer or last sample answer to this question. I am a very process oriented person. I like to adhere to processes and practices in professional as well as personal life. This will help me to adhere to organization code of conduct and business policies. Now, when you say you are process oriented, you might have to again give an example. One example I can think is like you can say that even in my daily routine, I like to follow processes. I get up at a fixed time, I have a breakfast, I go for a walk, I read a book in the afternoon for 2 hours. So by giving this example, you are telling the interviewer that you are actually a process oriented person and you like to follow processes, which is a good thing because in every organization, every employee has to adhere to a set of processes, business policies, and there is a code of conduct in every organization. So this is about question three. Let us move on to the question four. The question four is, what do you know about our company? Or what do you know about a software organization? Or why do you want to join our company? Now, for this to be answered, you need to know about the software organization. The things that you can do is, first thing, go before you go for the interview, go to the company website and take a note of the following points. What kind of products and services they offer? What is the domain area? Are they working in the supply chain? Are they working in cloud? Or are they a content provider? Or it could be that they are a conglomerate offering services to almost all the domains, like any services IT giant like Accenture, Infosys, TCS do. Then, do they have offices worldwide? It's good to know, and you can mention that I checked on a website that you're present almost all over the world, or your offices are in 2 countries. What's the market percentage share of the product they offer? So if it's a product company, then it does make sense to check what is the percentage of the product market share that their product has. And I'm pretty sure that the interviewer will be impressed by the fact that you will share with him. A list of clients, good to know, not compulsory as such or not mandatory as such. A little history of the company and how the company grew. Now, to get this information, or in fact, to get information of all the points that I have listed here, you can go to Wikipedia as well. If you search for Wikipedia and the company name, the Wikipedia page will list as a first search result on Google. Go to Wikipedia and then read about the company. When was it started? What is the turnover of the company? How much profit it makes? How much employees are there right now in the organization? What kind of products and services they offer? So that can be one place where you can get all the information. So you can skip even the company website and go to Wikipedia directly to learn about the organization. And then in the interview, you can talk about the company, what you know about it, and then you can tell you really like the domain or you really like the products. You find that interesting and challenging, and that is something you really want to work for. So that's about question four. Now, this is what the HR interview lecture was about. And I do have one more lecture on the HR interview. I'll talk about more sample questions and answers that I've added in the resources section in the next lecture. So see you in the next lecture. Thank you. Hello. As promised in the last lecture, I have a resources section in this lecture where you can go and download an ebook. The ebook has HR interview questions and sample answers to those. Now, bear in mind that do not mug up these answers as it is. They are sample answers, and I really want you to think on those sample answers and improvise them. Please add your own thoughts and creativity to those answers to make the answers more lively. You yourself should be satisfied with those answers, and when you talk them, they should appear natural to the interviewer. So go to the resources section and download the ebook and feel free to edit the answers as per your experience and choice. Thank you. Hi, welcome back. In this lecture, we will discuss about handling certain situations during the interview and also some tips. I think we have been covering a lot of tips in almost each and every lecture, so let's focus more on situation handling as a primary topic in this lecture. So, the first situation that you might run into is questions on a specific topic that are being asked to you for which you do not know the answers. For example, let's say the interviewer asks you about IP addresses. What is an IP address? How do you check an IP address? What are the classes of IP address? By looking at the IP address, can you tell me whether it belongs to class A or class B or class C category of an IP address? Now, if IP address classification is not really a good strength of yours, then you have very limited options but to say no or I do not know the answer to these questions. So you can do that as well. But if he's still stressing on that point, you can be honest and tell the interviewer, hey, I'm not really good in IP addresses, or IP addresses is not my strength, but I can definitely take up questions on other networking topics. So at least you are trying to switch the context from a very negative mode which the interview has gone into to something positive. So you need to give the best shot at it and request the interviewer to change for the topic. So that's how you can handle this particular situation. Now, the next thing, which is very common nowadays, since the last 1.5 years, ever since the COVID situation started, I have been interviewing candidates online on Zoom and Skype. And network connectivity is something that nobody can assure of. Especially, let's say you're talking to candidates across geography, they are in a different time zone, you do not know how the network connectivity is there. So during the interviews, most of the time I'm not able to hear them, or the video is flaky, or it stucks. So the interview experience is definitely hampered. Even the candidate sometimes drops and then he again joins back the Zoom or the Skype call. So overall, the flow of the interview is broken, and that is definitely going to impact the overall interview experience for both parties. So one thing you can do is request the interviewer whether you can turn the video off, so that it saves the bandwidth and at least he's able to hear you, or you know you are in a position to share the screen and you can see his screen while you're coding. But remember one thing: most of the interviewers are in favor of turning on the video because they really want to see you when you answer these questions. And also, there's a trust factor when you turn on the video. You are the one who is actually answering and joining the organization, and there's no proxy for you sitting there and answering and taking up the interview questions. Right. And the next thing is, if that doesn't work out, if you really have a bad network connectivity, you got dropped 2, 3 times, then you can request the interviewer that, hey, can we reschedule the interview to some other time? This has happened with me personally when I have interviewed candidates, and I was totally okay with it. You need to understand that the need is from both sides. You need the job and the organization needs you. So both of them sometimes do agree in these kind of situations. And the best thing to do is to reschedule and have the interview at some later point of time. Next, conflict handling. Now, sometimes the interviewer might deliberately take the discussion into a conflicting situation. For example, you write a particular program, and let's say there are two for loops, nested for loops. Now he's trying to ask you to optimize the code so that you can get rid of one for loop so that the time complexity can be reduced. Now in your mind, based on how smart you are already thinking, or you already have a pre-notion that this program cannot be written with a single for loop. Two nested for loops are needed. If you tell the interviewer that this nested for loops are needed and I cannot change it to a single for loop, he's going to ask you and insist, let's say, he try to change it to a single for loop. I know it can be done, and I need you to try and solve this particular problem statement. Now, rather than getting into a conflict, you can definitely go ahead and try for it, because getting into a conflict is not going to help you clear the interview. So the best thing you can do here is make an attempt to change the program to a single for loop. It could be that he is right. It could be that what you were thinking was wrong. But rather than getting into a conflict when you are discussing a certain algorithm or certain logic in the code, you need to think whether the points you are telling the interviewer, he is agreeing with you or not, or is there any alternate route to solve this particular code. at least go ahead and try and see what the interview is asking you to do. So that's how you can avoid conflicts. Now, the last thing, not really a situation handling, but a tip to everyone. Programming language is never a barrier. Logic is what matters. So you can write your logic in C, Java, Python, .NET. So program is just a syntax, but your logic definitely is not going to change. Let's say binary sorting or checking the length of the string. What is important is the logic, right? Program is just a syntax. Now, why I'm discussing this? Because since last 2 years, I have been recruiting candidates only for Python positions. But 80% of the candidates whom I have interviewed, they didn't knew Python at all. All of them were Java experts or C experts or .NET experts. But I have an understanding that programming language is just a syntax. If the person can write logic, he can definitely pick up Python. So obviously there would be a little bit of learning curve, but you should be able to switch to that particular language very easily. So if in the interview, if a question comes up that, hey, you're good at Python, but we want you to work on Java, would you be comfortable? I think the answer to that should be yes, unless you are really a Python freak and you really love Python. But if you, at the same time, you need to think that if you need this first job that desperately, switching to the language is not going to impact you in any way. It is just the syntax that is going to change. Having said that, the last point, which I have been covering right from the beginning of this lectures, attempt and try. Do not give up easily on puzzles, coding at all. It really leaves a very bad impression the moment I ask a particular program to write, and let's say the candidate comes back to me within 30 seconds or 1 minute and says, uh, I do not know how to solve this. What impression does it carry on my mind? uh, I know at that point of time that I'm going to reject this candidate. He has not even attempted. Coding is a must, let it be a software developer or a tester, and you're not even attempting the basic code itself and giving up so easily. So always try to attempt the puzzles and the coding problem statement. Spend 2 3 4 5 minutes at least, and we have discussed in the last lecture, if you know the solution, it's fine to take even 15 20 25 minutes also to solve the particular problem statement. So that's about situation handling, and this is what I wanted to cover in this lecture. See you in the next lecture. Thank you. Hi. In this lecture, we will discuss about certain questions that you can ask to the interviewer at the end of the interview. When the interview is almost done, the interviewer is most likely going to ask you whether you have any questions or doubts in your mind. And you can use these questions as a reference to ask him the right set of questions. Again, this is not an exhaustive list of questions, and you can think and come up questions of your own based on the context of the interview. So the first question you can ask him is, what are the day-to-day expectations from this role? This is a good question to ask. The interviewer will think that he is trying to understand your your own roles and responsibilities. The next question that you can ask is, which product and technologies I'll be working on if offered. So now this is a broad level question. You're not actually asking the day-to-day role, but you are more interested in the technology stack of the organization and what kind of product these organizations are offering. So again, the interviewer will be very happy to take up this question. The next question you can ask is, can you share any feedback about me, or do you suggest any improvement areas for me? This is a very good question to be asked to the interviewer if you are finding it difficult to crack interviews. Let's say you have given multiple interviews and somehow you're not clearing the technical rounds. Then this question you can use to get feedback about yourself based on the interview that you just completed. And then gather those data points and start improving on those data points. And one more tip at the end of this lecture, avoid compensation or benefit questions. You want to put aside the salary discussion and the benefits discussion at a stage where you are actually offered a job and not at the end of this technical interview or the HR interview. You will get your chance to discuss the benefits when you are actually offered. So do not rush on that particular discussion. So this is it for this lecture, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you. Hi. In this lecture, we will discuss on the topic of your luck versus your preparation. Sometimes, despite everything going good, all you clearing all the interview rounds, you might still not get that particular offer. Or It could be the thing that you tried really good for your dream job. You wanted to work in a specific organization, let's say Facebook, Microsoft, or it could be any good services organization. But you actually ended up with an offer with an organization which you are not really interested to work with. So let me discuss on these topics. The first thing, sometimes despite doing all the rounds good, you might not crack it. Now you clear the round one, round two, round three. You also even talk to the HR and you thought that was a good round two, but still you don't get the offer. What exactly went wrong there? A couple of things I wanted to mention. Every software organization has a limited set of positions. I think everybody understands this point. So it could be that multiple candidates cleared the round and then someone was really better than you. If there were more than one positions open, I bet you might have also got the job. Now, if someone is really doing better or a couple of candidates are doing better than you, then obviously the people who are hiring, they have to let some people go, and it could be you. So there is no need to get disappointed. In this case, your preparation was good, but your luck factor didn't play well. Now, sometimes nobody is offered. Like you, your friends, all of you who have cleared the rounds, nobody gets a call. What happens internally in an organization? There is change in dynamics, and they really no longer want to fill in the position soon, and they decide to keep that position on hold. Again, that's bad luck. Nothing that you didn't have to blame on yourself. Your preparation was good, but purely a luck factor. In these cases, I want to highlight that there is no need to feel discouraged or disappointed. I understand it could happen multiple times, but then keep trying on, and getting disappointed is not going to help you in any way. So you have to maintain that motivation level to appear for the next round and do your best. Next thing. So you might get a job, but it's not really a dream job. You end up in a small organization versus a big brand job that we are looking for. Or it's a big brand, but they are offering you a contract position. What do you do? It all depends upon you. If your mind and heart is willing to compromise on that job, I would suggest go ahead for it. But I have a better reason instead of this. Getting the first job is what matters, I think, when it comes to fresh graduates. Once you get that job, spend 6 months, 1 year, learn the tools and technologies, learn the processes, be it a small organization or be it a contract position. And once you are no longer a fresh graduate, you have an experience of a year or so, you can start applying anywhere else. And the whole world is open for you after that. Nobody calls you a fresher at that time, really, because you have on field experience. So go for it. Side by side, you can still keep applying and keep looking for new jobs. So do not let go the opportunity that is in hand. Take it and continue looking, and at the same time, keep doing best in the job. Keep your mind open to learn new things at the new place. That is what I wanted to suggest in this section. Now, there is a quote or there is a saying, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. You might say that guy is lucky he got a job in Microsoft or Facebook, but that's not really the thing. It is not just luck. It is his preparation and the luck that got him that particular job. So both opportunity and preparation are must. You're without preparation, you're definitely not going to get a job. And luck plays 1% role. Like, multiple candidates clear the round and then somehow you didn't get that opportunity. And practice will make you perfect. To prepare means to practice and practice a lot. You have to understand that your first job is a milestone thing in your life. You have to give your best. You cannot go ahead with with your preconceived feelings that, hey, I'm not good at networking or I'm not really good at data structures. You have to go ahead, give the time, 2 days, 3 days for it, and I'm pretty sure you'll understand those concepts, because you just have to crack your first job. Thereafter, it's all easy peasy job. Switching organizations, asking for a raise, that will automatically fall in place. But first thing is that you need to do your preparation well. If you're not good in certain areas, coding, solving puzzles, spend time for yourself. Nobody's going to get any benefit out of it. You are the sole beneficiary of that particular preparation. So that's it for this lecture, and see you in the next lecture. Thank you. Hi, welcome to this bonus lecture. In this lecture, we'll discuss where you can apply for the job. Some of you might already know this, but not everybody around the world understands it very easily that where they can actually look for a job. Now, you need to understand that applying for jobs is not a very definite process. You need to keep trying at multiple places until you get that first call of your interview and crack it, and then the first job lands in your hand. Till that point of time, you need to continuously be in a loop, keep checking across all the resources that I'm going to share here on screen. So let's move on. The first thing you can do is via campus career fair. Now, if your university is good, reputed, most of the big MNCs, big product organizations come to your campus career fair, and that is your best shot. You don't have to look out anywhere. The organizations are coming to your college. All you need to do is prepare for the interviews and crack it. This is the best case scenario, I would say, and every fresher, every fresh graduate should try for this to and try to secure a job in the campus career fair itself. Because when you move outside of the college or university, you are directly competing in at least 10x or 100x of competitors or freshers. Whereas in your college or university, it could be 100 or 200 fresh graduates you are competing with. The next thing, what you can do is you can convert your internship into a full time. So let's say you're working in a software organization as an intern. Stay close to the manager, ask him how I can convert my internship into a full time. What is it that I need to do during my internship so that the organization will value me and try to offer me a full time role. At the end of the internship, feel free to ask them whether I can join as a full time. That's your best shot. At the worst case, they might say no, and the best case is that your manager will try to convert your internship into a full time position. Next, apply via referral. So if you know any your college alumni is working in software organizations, try sending your resume to them and ask them to refer you in the organizations. Any friends or friends of friends, if they are working in IT organizations, send them your resume and they can apply on your behalf. Another good thing to find referrals is that you can actually go to LinkedIn. Let me share my screen. Let's move to LinkedIn. You can go to LinkedIn, and if you go to your network, go to your My Network, and there you can start searching for your friends. Who's your first network? Who's your second network? And then it could happen that you can find people whom you might not know, but he's a connection of some of your friend, some of your old colleague, and then you can message them and ask them to apply for a job in that particular organization. That's the best thing you can do in case of referrals. Now, the next thing is you can directly apply for jobs on LinkedIn itself. If you go to the job section, you can search for jobs here. Let's say I try fresher here, fresher, and maybe I select the country United States. So here I can see some organizations having opening for software engineers, electrical engineers, QA testers. You can apply CC++ freshers in HCL. So you can apply filters, check out the job openings, and apply via LinkedIn. Again, you need a very good resume. Make sure your LinkedIn profile reflects the same thing that is on your resume, and apply to these organizations via LinkedIn itself. Now, that's one way. Coming back to the presentation, we discussed that you can apply via referral. Now, you can also apply via LinkedIn to a job posting. And the last thing you can do is apply online directly to the software organization. So coming back to my Firefox browser again, let's say you want to apply for TCS. So I can go here in browser and say TCS freshers. So the first Google link itself is taking me to the freshers hiring link for TCS. Here, there's already a program running for freshers, I think, for 2020 to 2022 graduates. Click on that link and apply. Same thing, you can go and apply for, let's say, Amazon Freshers USA. So, yeah, I can see an entry level, intern level opportunities in Amazon here. So, filter it based on the software engineering or IT role and apply to the position directly. So if let's say you want to apply for Infosys, so go to Google, type Infosys freshers. I think you should get a link. The first link itself is Infosys careers. Here, based on what area, what country you are in, select the right country and check out the position and apply for it. So if I go to Asia Pacific and waiting for loading the page, Here I can see technical associate opening. So if I click any of these technical associate opening, and I'm moving on down, yeah. So if you recently completed your graduation or have 0 to 2 years industry experience and are looking for a big career break, then join us. So they are inviting applications for freshers, see if the skills are matching and apply directly to these organizations. Now, as I said, this is a never-ending process. You need to continuously stay in this loop, keep on applying, keep on checking whether an organization has new openings for freshers, and the moment you see an open position, send in your resume there. So this is what you can do to search job and apply for jobs. I hope you found this whole course very useful. As I said, getting that first job is what really matters to you. And if this course has helped you 10%, 20%, 40%, or 50% in improving your interview skills, in writing a better resume, in speaking up confidently in the interview, then I think it was worth investing time and money on this course. I want to wish good luck to all of you, all the best, and hope you get that dream job very soon. Thank you. Do leave a good positive rating so that I can reach to as many freshers as possible on Udemy and they can take benefit of this particular course. Thank you and good luck.